I just followed the curve, and that, when that touches, that's where you want to stop. So when you get that filed back to the bezel, 400 grade paper on a flat sanding stick, once again follow the curve, that way you won't be putting little flat spots in it. And when it gets to that finish, that's where you can stop. So at this point I've got my bezel upside down sitting on a charcoal block, and a little bit of flux on the whole base because the base is sterling, and if we don't put some kind of fire scale prevention on there, it's going to give us fire scale, and it's a pain in the bum to get off the back side of a ring. And then we're going to just one piece of solder at each point where this touches. So take your time lining the ring shank up, because if it's crooked later on, it's kind of a pain in the bum to try to sort out. Sometimes you can just tweak it a little bit, but more often than not you'd have to re-solder. Now, neutral flame, I'm using hard solder. You can use easy, but the hard is a better color match, so I'm just drawing this out. And then I'll push the solder where it's supposed to be. And then this instance, it really doesn't matter whether your original solder flows or not, because everything's held in place. So even if it flows, nothing's going to move. So now I'm just shifting, circling between the base and the ring shank. The solder flows. Yep. Switch to the other side. Make sure it flows nicely. Quench it and pickle it. So we're out of the pickle. Everything is lovely. Hallmark this and polish all of this now before we set our hemisphere in there. Okay, everything is shiny, and we're ready to set our hemisphere. Now, you could have just soldered this directly to the base, but I wanted a bezel setting for a little bit different look, which is why I did this. A little more complicated, but it was actually the look I wanted. So line up your hemisphere. This one is slightly oval, so it'll only go in one way. And I'm going to mix a little bit of two-part epoxy to put in here, not to hold it in, but to waterproof it, because this is hollow. And even though the bezel will make a good seal, water will still get in. So I'm going to put my two-part epoxy right here on the base before I set the bezel. So equal amounts of the epoxy. And we can put a fair amount in this because it is hollow and it won't squeeze up over the sides. It will just stay on the inside. So push it around until there's a nice line right around where your hemisphere is going to sit. We want this to be completely waterproof. Leave your toothpick sitting on your paper. And push your hemisphere down inside. Now I'm going to use a bezel rocker to set this, and if you're using a bezel rocker, pass it over your sanding stick to make sure that it's not shiny. It gives it a bit of a dull finish so it won't slip. And then you're just going to push this against your hemisphere. I'll zoom in so you can see a little bit better. So your bezel rocker, the edge of the bezel will be right in the center of your bezel rocker. Now as I turn my vise to the right, I'm also going underneath and I'm turning the screw that holds it. Otherwise it tightens up and you can't turn it. Now just go around and make sure that your bezel is touching your hemisphere all the way around. This one is slightly irregular, which is okay. Wipe it off with the tissue, just on the off chance a little bit of glue escaped, and then let this dry, and you can finish polishing it. But there it is, my little solstice pimple ring.